Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real-time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. I'm super excited for today's guest. She is an architectural engineer with over 20 years of corporate business development experience. She's an executive turned multi-passionate entrepreneur. Her personal mission is to create positive change by encouraging people to live adventure-filled lives. She's the owner of Altitude, which manages a portfolio of brands to elevate guest experiences. Please welcome Jennifer Desrosiers. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Jennifer, we love talking about endurance and the endurance mindset. So my question for you, tell me how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
Well, I don't think I realized the connection between endurance and business until I owned a restaurant, and certainly building a team, cultivating a culture, really being purpose driven. That doesn't happen overnight. It's not a sprint by any means. It is 100% an endurance event. And, being able to see it as that really helps me stay grounded. And I like to think of it as an adventure, which is very similar to endurance as well. Like it's not a one and done here. We're in it for the long haul.
It's really well said. And I love how you brought in adventure. Can you talk to us about how you use adventure within your businesses?
hmm When I decided that it was time for me to depart from the culture or the corporate environment, a big reason was that I felt very disconnected from one of my passions, which was adventure. And it was circa 2010 when I had this pivotal moment where I decided my success does not hinge on my career. And I could create success by aligning with some of my passions, one of which is adventure, the other is wellness, the other is business, the other is culture creation, and throwing a good party. And so for me, adventure at that point, when I made that decision, started to look very differently. So what I used to think in my culture of my corporate days is I used to think adventure is whatever I do on Saturday and Sunday. And then I started realizing, actually, for me, adventure could be more of a mindset. It could be how I want to live my life. Rather than thinking about my life as an itinerary or an agenda of got to do A, B, C, D to be successful, I could really create a whole bunch more flexibility in that and bring a lot more fun. And as we know, you never know what's going to come around the corner on an adventure. And that's really what life is all about. So for me, like I teach about having an adventurous mindset in my businesses because that's what keeps us like open-minded and flexible, and embracing a sense of uncertainty, which I feel like as an Ironman athlete, you would know, like every race, every moment of the race is really uncertain. You can't really forecast what's going to happen, right?
Absolutely right. And one of my most recent races, I started the swim and I'm halfway through the swim and I'm worrying about how I'm going to finish the day. And, there's still 15 more hours to go. And for some reason, I just told myself, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Like, just be in this moment right now, enjoy this swim. And I ended up having the greatest swim of my career so far. The rest of the day was a struggle. But to your point, if you change that mindset and look at it as an adventure and enjoy the journey, it makes it that much more palatable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people say like, don't look back, or don't look ahead too far. And one of the things, like my favorite thing to do, my favorite endurance event is actually peak traversing. And so there's a really technical hike around here in New Hampshire, in the White Mountains. It's the Presidential Traverse, and it's 20 miles and 4,000 plus footers that you're going to traverse over the course of hopefully a day. And there's one point when you get to Mount Washington, you can turn around and look, and you can see it on a clear day, the trail as it heads over 10 miles that way and 10 miles this way. And to me, that's like one of the most pivotal moments to be like, yes. And I didn't know if I could get here. And now I can see the end because I can also see where I started. Does that make sense?
100% makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's very cool.
Um, going back to 2010 and this pivotal moment that you left corporate life and became an entrepreneur, walk us through those feelings that you were having during that time and making that decision.
Certainly when I discovered this truth that my success was not tied into my corporate career, it was certainly life changing. I just remember going, and it will never be the same from here. Like literally from that moment on. The next 4 years were not like a straight shot for me. I became a yoga teacher, became a health coach, created my first company called Wild Adventurous Life, and then I literally turned away from that company and ran the opposite direction as fast as I could. And one of the reasons was I just didn't know how to execute on this idea. I wanted to create an online wellness and adventure community. I wanted to create live events and masterminds, etc. And at that time, there weren't a lot of people doing it. And so for me, like I got caught up in hesitation, fear, certainly uncertainty, and that was really tough. And now looking back, of course, hindsight is 2020. I should have just gone for it. I think it was a really good idea. But what I've done now is like I've learned that I'm still that same person. Those passion points are still the same for me. I can bring those in, even though I somehow became a restaurateur. Um, I can still bring all those elements into my existing brands in a new and really exciting way. And I was just looking through an old notebook last night and I was seeing myself writing notes from literally 5 years ago of things that we're just really putting into play now. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I do think life is a journey. It will unravel as it's meant to unravel. And, Jennifer 5 years ago wasn't quite ready for those things. I was excited to be thinking about them, and that bigger vision has driven me to where I'm at. But a whole lot of stuff has happened in between there, and that's life, right?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to getting into that. But rewinding us for a second, um, how did this epiphany come to you about the success isn't dependent on your corporate career? Like, when did that nugget come into your head? Where you're in a yoga position, where you're out for a run, where you're doing one of these peaks? When did it actually that light bulb come on?
So, have you ever heard of Byron Katie?
I have not, but I will look that up.
Yeah, she's pretty well known in the mindfulness, meditation, self-development world, and she has a practice where she brings you through a series of questions, but one of them is truth seeking. So it says, you have to make a statement, and then you have to ask yourself, is that true? Is that a fact? And so my question to myself is my success tied to my corporate career? And at the moment and time when I asked myself that, I was feeling really separate from myself. I was very clear at that point. There was work me, then there was personal me, and I would spend a lot of time figuring out how do I create. I was assessing whether or not I was reaching balance, and oftentimes I was feeling a sense of failure around that. So I was sitting in yoga. We were doing some mindfulness practices, and someone asked me that question. What's your statement? I said, "Is my success? My success is tied to my corporate career." And she asked me, "Is that true?" And of course, I have to say no. Of course. And I was like, "Well, shoot." You really just blew that up for me. And I mean, it's kind of nerdy thing to say, but true fact, I had been so focused on my career by the time I was probably 14 years old. I was a very focused student and young person and knew I wanted to create success and make a difference, but I just didn't know how I was going to do it. So I thought that my, corporate career was the way to get it done.
Powerful, really, really powerful. Jennifer, any other mindfulness habits or practices that you do on a daily, weekly basis that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, this is a really timely question because I really believe in the power of visualization. And of course, for me, like that really came out of, again, adventure is seeing myself. And I guess you probably do the same thing. Is like you envision yourself crossing the finish line, right? When you start, you're like, of course, you're wanting to get to the end. And you know it's going to be probably pretty challenging on the way. So for me in adventure and especially in mountain biking, I've spent a lot of time visualizing how can I like build my skill and how can I feel myself like on the bike. And for instance, for me, my passion when I was younger was downhill mountain biking. So I would really like I would pretend I was on the bike and really feel myself like cruising down and like I guess it's really like letting my body be part of my suspension and to be able to, really cruise over big rocks or obstacles, roots, etc. And then eventually push myself to start doing drops, which was a big thing for me physically to be like, okay, yeah, no, I'm going to launch myself off from this 6 foot cliff and everything is going to be okay. So I had to start. For me, it was really seeing myself do it, launch it, land it, be okay. And I have taken that technique and really put that forth into building businesses. So, one of my passions is building epic experiences. And in my businesses, I want to understand and feel in my body and soul before I even go, before I even begin. What does my business feel like? What does it feel like for me to walk in the door? What does it feel like for me to run it? What does it feel like for my guest to experience it? What does it feel like for my team to be a part of it? And once I can feel that and see that in my mind's eye, I know that it's possible. And so for me, like I just opened my third restaurant. I've probably looked at 30 restaurants or 30 spaces over the course of the last 9 years. And so that means there were 27 that I walked away from. And I walked away from them because I couldn't see it. It wasn't in my heart yet. And it's obviously in a very intuitive practice.
I 100% use visualization. And so your stories really resonated with me. One of the things that I visualize is what experience do I want to have during the day? It's not only just crossing the finish line and feeling good and seeing family and tearing up, but it's across the day. What am I trying to accomplish from an experience perspective? And then also like the anticipation drives a lot of that one foot after the other, doing the hard runs, doing the work that you have to do to get to the finish line.
I totally agree. I think that the preparation piece obviously is so critical as an athlete. I think it's equally as critical as someone that wants to just accomplish something big in whether that's in their personal life or professional life, et cetera. For me, I actually think it's all the same. I really talk strongly about the idea of creating one integrated experience in my life. My life is not separate from my purpose and passion and career. Um, and my life is not separate from my fun and my friends and my family. So I try to bring all those things together. And I think I do that pretty well, but I agree. It's like you have to look at all aspects of the experience. And for us, like when we're preparing for a big run or a big endurance event, that comes in loving every moment of the training as well. If you hate the training, but you're just doing it for the race, like sounds pretty miserable.
You mentioned earlier that you were reviewing your notes from 5 years ago. It sounds like you've got a journaling practice.
Oh, I wish I did. Oh, it's just a note-taking practice, and I'm trying to be better, and I was looking for an empty notebook, and I opened up this one. I was like, "Oh, this one's full," and it's from 5 years ago, so that was last night's journey down memory lane.
That's awesome. You also mentioned you build epic experiences for your guests. What's the epic of the epics?
Mm. Well, we look at it from the beginning to the end. So I think that typically now, because of technology, the guest experience starts online. They're typically experiencing you, and it's very cyclical, right? So they might jump into the process. They might randomly run into the restaurant while they're walking down the street. or they might find us online first. So typically it starts online, whether it's social media or website, and comes all the way full circle to what is it like to pull into the parking lot, to experience the space, the team, the food. And I think the key after that, that many, many people don't think about is, how do I feel after? And for a restaurant, this could be many different things. How do I feel after in terms of my, my experience of the space? So you might walk out and go, "Oh, that was either beautiful or maybe it was dirty," and you might have a feeling about it. But what you're going to remember more so is how the team made you feel. So did you feel valued and seen? That's something we talk about so much. Just the value of, looking at someone in the eye and saying hello to them and taking a moment from whatever you're doing as a team member to acknowledge that a guest has even just walked in the door can go a long way. And then beyond that, how do I feel after I eat the food? And typically our bodies are going to inform us around food and nourishment, maybe 15, 30, 45 minutes later. So not everyone's super aware that our bodies are doing that, but we might just start to feel sluggish or energetic or whatever. And that's our body saying whatever you just did is either working for us or it's not.
How do you measure that after restaurant performance? Or you just told a story about how you start with the experience from, like, even before they get to the parking lot, and that experience extends at some point in time after they've left. As the owner of that business, how do you get information around, the experience either pre or post them being on your location?
I really, what's the word I want to say? Like, I want to say the word excavate. I don't know if that's the right word, but I really try to get that information out of our guests. I'll spend a lot of time when I'm in the restaurants, we're just walking around the dining room. I should say that all of our restaurants are fast casual. So people are ordering at a register and then going and sitting down, or they're taking it to go. So when I have the opportunity to, I'll just, walk up to someone and say, "How was your experience today?" And typically I'm going to find out whether they're a first timer or a repeat customer. And then people are pretty quick to share when given the opportunity why they came back. And I think we're really fortunate because we've spent so much time on cultivating the experience, but also cultivating our mission and purpose, and like why we do what we do. People really are really attracted to that, and we tend to have a community of people that are really aligned with what we do. So then they see like the bigger vision. It's not just about serving the healthiest food possible, like at Laney and Lou. It's about helping them become a better person, to discover, maybe a part of them that they haven't discovered. And I know that feels very woo, but it really is what we're trying to do. And people can see it and feel it. They don't necessarily understand why. Maybe some of them do. But for me, I just go and ask them, and then I take all that information back and I start seeing it's like story after story after story. And then obviously, if you're seeing a person day after day after day, you've done something right.
Certainly. I'd love to explore the connection between how you build your team and your culture and how you see that show up in the guest experience.
So we're really clear on what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And after 9 years, I have an exceptional group of executive leaders, those that run our houses. Those are our restaurants, their houses, their homes. That's where we come and spend a lot of our time. Is where our family is. And those guys have gotten really good at hiring people that align. And that alignment comes in our core values. They don't necessarily have to have a set of skills. Like, they don't need to have hospitality experience to be successful in our companies, because those are skills that can be taught. But it's much more difficult to teach someone compassion. Maybe that might be a good example. Is we're very compassionate leaders and business people, and if we can see people are getting excited about our core values of contribution and connection and some of the larger things, the way we are as people, then we're pretty sure they're going to fit into our culture really well.
So during that interview process, does that end up being a gut feeling, or do you have tools that you use to sort of assess cultural fit? Help us understand how the mechanics of that work.
Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely have a formula of questions that we will ask, but I feel like you can really see right away how is someone engaging with you. When you ask about the experiences that they had in their last company, if they're immediately moving towards the negative, then maybe that's not the right opportunity for us. But if they say, "Oh, maybe these things weren't ideal, but here's what solutions I brought to the table, or here's what I think we could have done differently," that type of idea generation and things like that is so critical. And that's me bringing in little aspects. My corporate career was in manufacturing, and so there's little skill sets and mindsets that I say, "Okay, wait, that person has a continuous improvement mindset. They're going to be." They're going to be great contributors on our team. Again, assuming that they meet the criteria of just being, good, kind, action-oriented, energetic people.
So switching gears slightly, and going back to your entrepreneurial journey, anything unexpected pop up so far across your journey of when you first started your business and, "Oh my goodness, this happened," or "This opportunity showed itself," or "This downside happened." Anything kind of unexpected pop up in your life?
Oh gosh, I'm sure there's many stories like that. Um, I think to get real, um, back in my yoga days, we used to say your yoga mat is your mirror. And what does that mean? That means that when your teacher is asking you to hold, say, warrior two for 20 breaths, which is a long time, when she's doing that to you, and all of a sudden, all you can hear is, well, I don't know why she's doing this. And that's not, I mean, who would ever call a 20 breath warrior two? And so on and so forth. And then you get to the point of, this is really dumb. Why am I doing this? To, I can't do this. Now I can't do this. And now you're going down that rabbit hole, right? Um, so that's the power of yoga and the power of asana. It's because you actually figure out by the end of that 20 breath, you realize I actually could do it, but look at the journey my brain just took while we did it. Business is very similar to that. And so what I discovered unexpectedly through the challenges of team development and hiring and firing and bringing in consultants and pushing myself to new heights is I don't know if I can swear on this podcast,
Please
but
do.
my shit came up fast. And then I started to realize, the patterns that I have. And one of my patterns actually is I'm very quick to hire. And I'll see everyone's potential before they see it in themselves. That's a good quality, and that can be a bad quality, because then I'm also like, come on, I can see that you can do this. What's holding you back? And then there could be a whole set of things that are holding them back. Or I'll be quick to believe when someone says, I'm an expert in this area, pay me this money. And so I've had to learn, to slow my roll. Not too much too soon can be a bit of an issue for me. And really like go slowly at the beginning, specifically with experts or consultants or things like that. Like, show me a little bit what you can do before I, hand over this responsibility to you.
Smart. Very, 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 very smart. You
Mhm.
mentioned you can see the best in people and bringing that out of them. It sounds like there's some sort of coaching methodology or coaching practice within your organization. Is that the case?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think for me, if there isn't this feeling of forward-leaning energy and growth, which are two ideas that we're leaning into hard for 2024, and those are always undertones for me personally. But if I don't feel like I'm moving somewhere, and I'm not again leaning forward, it doesn't really feel worth doing it. And so I think for me, um, I really want my team members to feel like they're getting something out of it. It's not just, for Lainey and Lou, for instance, you might just come in and you might make coffee and smoothies and salads and things like that. It's really easy, I think, and these tend to be young adults, for them to feel like this is all I'm doing, or this is just what I'm doing. And they don't see it as a success marker. Maybe they see it as like a stepping stone or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what I want them to see is, no, 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 this is actually part of your career development. So what can you get out of it? I get you're just making a smoothie, but how can you bring more value into just that action, but also learn some really amazing skills with interacting with the guests, bringing up ideas, implementing things. Like, so we try to create an environment where people can really, express themselves and develop themselves professionally. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have such incredible retention rates. So we have people that have started, at the most entry level, that are now running our restaurants.
You're making me want to come work for you.
Yeah, I
You're
love
doing
it.
something,
I'm a
doing
permanent.
something right. Jennifer, outside of your restaurants, what other activities are you into? Do you have other businesses? Give us a little bit, broaden our perspective of what you do today.
Sure. So it all started with Lainey and Lou in 2015, a total passion project. I thought we'd make some smoothies. I'd run my wellness business. It would be fun, be cute. Cute was kind of a word we used back then. I thought maybe we'd have 30 to, 90 customers a day by the end of the year. And it was a tiny little place in the back of a building. And I didn't have a very big vision for it. Let's just say that. And we had over 100 people the first day. By the end of the first year, we were serving 600 people on a Saturday, and we were blowing every restaurant success indicator out of the water in terms of sales per labor hour, sales per square foot, et cetera, et cetera. So it was like, oh man, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that we were creating something very special. And maybe about 2 or 3 months in, I was like, okay, I'm officially a restaurant owner and I need to get serious about this if I want to do this. So we were, I thought we would do, I forget now what the P&L budget was, but I thought we might do, a couple 100,000 the first year. We did 1 million. And then from there, it's just, it's just continued to grow year over year, which has been very, very exciting. So once that happened, once I saw the potential of that brand, was of course, I was started to get invitations to grow the brand. And that was never part of the journey for me. So finally, last year, we ultimately opened our second Lainey and Lou location, twice the size, about 30 minutes away from the inaugural location. And then through a series of other events, I ended up opening a bakery about 2 months later last year as well, for kind of an unexpected diversification of brands. That was really exciting and very, very challenging. And then on the side of that, years ago, I ended up ranching a section of Lainey and Lou off into a charcuterie company. And that's called Palette. That one's run online exclusively. Our kitchen is in our Lainey and Lou kitchen. And then I, of course, still have this passion for events and coaching and the adventure components of, the business that I had started with. So about a year ago, I decided to create a container to hold all of these pillars together. And that is Altitude. And so most people would think of Altitude as a hospitality company. I think about it as an experiences company, to allow us to have some flexibility in what we create. So right now, of course, we have the hospitality brands, but then we do entrepreneurial events, coaching. We'll do combination of like adventure and self-development experiences. A lot can happen on the trail, as you know. And, so we have several women that have created businesses and concepts while, hiking up a mountain and just talking it through and being in an environment where they feel they feel welcomed to be able to be that vulnerable. So it's cool. I'm excited. I think it's very unique and very representative of who I am as a human and my ability to make an impact on the world.
That's awesome. So those adventures, are you curating those and posting them on your website, and then people come and find and sign up, and then they go and have their spirit? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, and I hope to do even more. So one of my like mastermind dreams is to have, a group of entrepreneurs that I'm working with. I would assume we tend to attract a lot of women, so I would assume most of them are women business owners that are making, really big moves in their business. So we'd be masterminding, and then also like our retreats, our get-togethers would be based around a pretty significant, adventure, sort of physical and that sort of thing, like an accomplishment like that.
yeah, that'd be super powerful. I've got a handful of people that I would send your way for sure.
Oh, I love.
I got and maybe go myself. I gotta rewind it a little bit. Why a restaurant? You said it was a passion project. Were
Mhm.
you into cooking and hospitality and that prior, or was it truly a let's just open up a restaurant and see what happens?
Well, I always like I'm the type of person that this isn't to mug, but if it was like I would be like, "Oh, that's cozy into my mug. I love this feeling." And I don't know why, but that was just something that kind of reminds me of those. Do you remember those old Folgers commercials when we
Mm,
were kids? There's something about like that chick on there. She looked like she was having a good time. I don't know, it really just sat with me. It's so funny. But I always thought, like, when I retire, I'll have a coffee shop, and made a couple moves in my 20s and they never panned out, whatever else. But yeah, around that same time as yoga teacher training and making this big shift in my corporate life, my body started to tell me as well, like, you're out of alignment. And so I actually did start to get pretty sick. I couldn't identify what was going on. I just generally knew that I was not well. And so I went to the doctors on and off for 2 months. They couldn't figure it out. So I was like, well, I'm just going to switch up how I eat. There's got to be something that I can figure out, and discovered the world of inflammatory foods and started to really just reboot my body and my health. And I never felt better when I was eating that way. And I was like, okay, well, that's something that's interesting. I think I can teach other people how to do this. So that was when I became a health coach. And so early on in that health coaching world, there's a lot of health coaches out there now, but at the time I didn't know anybody that was doing it. So that was cool.
that's awesome, and so important on our in our personal development, on our journeys, and there is a huge connection to what we put into our mouth and how our body
Yeah.
feels. On your website, there's a Speak at Impact. Talk to us about what that is.
Okay. So one of the so much of what I do like has come out of being in the dining room and talking to my guests, and just like one idea sort of leads to another, leads to another. So I noticed when Laney and Lou first opened, we only had 13 seats in this little tiny dining room. We've expanded since then to 30, but I started to notice like how epically powerful the people were that were coming into the restaurant, and how we were becoming a place of connection. And so I could look at, oh wow, she just started a company that's doing XYZ. Oh, she's doing XYZ, like et cetera, et cetera. And they everyone had their own superpowers. And so I started just going, you and you need to meet. You and you need to meet. And then I would witness them sit down, and in 2 hours, now they're best friends and they're hosting events together, whatever. And where we are in Southern New Hampshire is very special because we have a really powerful network and, entrepreneurial vibe, a lot of women-owned businesses. It's very special. I think mindfulness and health and wellness is something that's really important to a large number of people in the community here. And then we also are blessed with having access to a lot of local food and farms, et cetera. So I don't know if this is everywhere, but this is what I experience at Laney and Lou. Is so these people were coming together and I was connecting them, and then I started going, okay, and now I'm going to switch to, and rather than having just like smoothie making workshops and health oriented workshops, and events. Let's have entrepreneurial events. And so Impact was born out of hearing people in the dining room tell me their stories of how did they get to where they are today.
Mm.
And so it's loosely based on the hero's journey. And most people, they'll start on an adventure, on a journey, and as they loop around, there's called they cross the threshold, or they cross into what's called the dark soul, the nice dark night of the soul, or something like that. So some sort of big challenging event happens to them, and when they cross the threshold out of that event, then they realize A, what they're capable of, B, what they're passionate about, and what they can contribute to the world. And so Impact is the stories of people's exploration to discover their personal mission and how their personal mission has changed the world.
Wow, powerful.
It's
And
fun.
is that open to the public, or is there a registration? How does that
Yeah,
work?
it's open. Yeah. So it's kind of like a mini TEDx style. So 20 to 30-minute storytelling event. I typically have only 4 speakers at each event. Um, and they just get up there, and I've discovered things about people I've known for years that I had absolutely no idea about. And one of your former guests was one of my speakers, which is how we come to know each other. And I think it's a nice way for people to go, oh, it's not just me, it's not just me. A very, very successful female business owner took the stage and admitted that she tried to kill herself.
Wow.
And it just 200 people in the room floored everyone, because how would you would not have known that about her. You would not have known that. And I think it's very leveling, and there's a lot of tears, going, oh my gosh, this is a person that I look up to, and she just got really real. So, okay,
Yeah,
now you can cry.
that vulnerability, I can feel it in my skin. That's amazing. Um, Jennifer, how can an audience member get in touch with you?
Oh, all the ways. You can find me through all of my brands, or on Instagram, where I tend to hang out the most, at Jennifer L. Desrosiers. That's DESROSIERS. And yeah, we got a lot of cool things coming in 2024. So it would be so nice to connect and hang out.
Awesome. And we'll put those links in our show notes for sure. My last question for you, let's say there's a budding entrepreneur, female entrepreneur listening to our show today. What advice would you give her?
Gosh, it's going to be so simple, but just do it. Do it. It's going to be messy. It's going to be hard. But if you stick with it, I promise you, what's on the other side of all of that is something more beautiful than you can probably imagine.
That's powerful. And then the same question for the corporate female executive who is burnt out and tired. What advice would you give her?
So I have come to believe that not everyone is meant to own a business. Not everyone is meant to be their own boss, if you will. So it's okay if you love being in that environment and you love being part of a team. Find the team, the mission, really. Find the mission that drives you, that you feel aligned with, where you can feel like you can fully show up and be valued and seen, and be, relentless about that pursuit. If you do choose to leave your corporate career, you don't necessarily have to take the leap into just quitting and figuring it out. You can figure it out at the same time. There's enough minutes, enough hours in the day to do both for a little while, so that when you finally make that leap, you're not feeling frantic and overly vulnerable. You're going to need that bandwidth, especially in financial bandwidth, to be able to withstand the startup phase of your business, no matter what that is.
That's so well said. Jennifer, it's been awesome having you on the show. I enjoyed the visualization of the yoga mat as your mirror. I enjoyed our conversations around the power of visualization. And I'm so thankful that you had that pivotal moment in 2010 and you broke away from the corporate world to start your entrepreneurial journey. Your energy, I can feel it. It's amazing connecting with you. Audience members out there, if you got some value out of the show and our conversation with Jennifer, please like us, please subscribe. Please share this with your community and your friends so that our messages can get broad and the power of the entrepreneur spirit can be spread even further. Thank you, Jennifer. That was great.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefinduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.